Hey guys, how's it going today? I'm back at it again on this 2504 carburetor. I've had this thing out of the tractor a half dozen times or more because I just can't get it to function correctly. So I'll get two type modes of failure. One is the needle seat of my fuel coming in. I don't have it on my document here, but I do have it right there. That needle seat will either stay plugged up and the floats won't release it. And when that happens, I get no fuel in the carburetor. And so it'll stick up like that sometimes, and I got to fiddle with it to get flow into the carburetor. But the primary mode of failure, the one that I'm fighting the most, is it won't shut off. Oh, what did I miss? What did I do? Look at that. Oh dear. Did I not get the needle in there? I mean, you're pouring out of the fuel. Now I've got a brand new needle and seat in there. It's all clean as far as I can tell. The other avenue for failure for that is the floats rubbing or sticking in the bowl. I've gone through that a bunch of times. And every time I plug this thing in and turn on the fuel on the tractor, it just fills up, it floods out, and I get fuel just leaking out of the carburetor. So I started going through a troubleshooting process, and I forgive my diagram here, pretend like I diagrammed that right here. What I'm trying to diagram is my fuel level at shutoff, right? So what's the height of my fuel level at shutoff for the float? Well, let me take a step back. I came up with 5 different modes of failure, 5 things that could be happening, right? So it could just be my float level. And I've set the float level exactly as per spec in the document. I did some reading online, and people said, well, the specific gravity of fuel is light, or specific density of the fuel is less than it used to be when these were designed. That could be true. It's unleaded now. I don't run ethanol-based fuel. It could just be the well vent. And if that's true, then my floats will sit down. They won't have as much buoyancy. They won't be lifted up as much. And so I'll get a higher level of fuel. So what could happen is if my fuel level gets up above this well vent jet, then it can backflow. Well, it'll flow from here up the well vent jet and then back down. You can see that right there. That's my well vent jet, and it is lower than, say, this mating surface. I've also got this part which is lower, which is my discharge, right? My fuel discharge. And if I'm leaking a significant amount around there, then it could be pouring out of there. I don't think I'm leaking a significant amount of fuel around the discharge. I've looked at it. It looks like it's getting wet, but it doesn't look like it's leaking enough to give the evidence of how much of a leak I had. We could also have just a sticky float and a sticky needle again, or we could have a cracked bowl. This bowl, you can just see how pitted it is from previous damage. The bowl could be cracked, and I just happen to see it, and the fuel is flowing through. Once again, a lot of fuel is flowing through. I don't think it's a crack. I think to get that much flow, I would see the crack. So where does that leave us? That leaves us with sticky needle and float level. That's kind of where we're at. The floats, they're brand new floats because the previous ones were crushed and damaged beyond. They were horrible. So we're going to go through and we're going to try to test some of this stuff, right? So I want to experiment and find out what my actual fuel level is, right? So I'm going to have a fuel level right here that I don't know what that is. And it's not going to be the same as my float level. And this gasket is going to have something to do with the level in the bowl, or the bowl relative to my datum point. So if I call my datum point this flat mating surface of the carburetor, that's where you measure your float levels from. Call that 0, my gasket is about 32 thousandths thick. My float from this same datum is 1 and 1/32, which is 1 and 5/32, which is 1.156 inches. Right, so it's 1 and 5/32. I have a rough measurement of my discharge vent. The lower opening where that goes through is at 627 from this surface right here, which means I have to add my gasket thickness. So I have 659, and the same thing for this well vent. This well vent is add the gasket thickness 187 thousandths from my datum point. So I need to measure the point at which my carburetor shuts off fuel going into the bowl here, and if it is less than 187 thousandths, then I have to adjust my floats to compensate for that. There's one other thing that I noticed on the tractor, and that's the level. This is all assuming this all stays level. I think, and it's hard to measure, I don't have the tools to measure it, I think this carburetor actually sits at not like that, but it sits at just a little bit of an angle, which is going to have the same effect. Will have the effect of lowering this well discharge vent. We're going to see how close we are. So I've got an idea. I think it's a good idea. Follow along with me here. So I did some reading online and did some research, and there's ways you can check the level of the fuel in the bowl. You could replace one of these plugs with a nipple and a clear fuel line. Bring the fuel line up here, plug it off, fill it up, and you'll see where your fuel level equalizes in that clear fuel line. That's a fantastic idea. I just don't have any of that handy. But I do have a clear plastic jug, and I've got a carburetor. All right, so if I take this and I just place it right here on this clear plastic, I've got a set of calipers here that I'll be able to measure down from this top lip down into the fuel, determine where my actual fuel level is when this shuts. Here we go. I've got a carburetor. I've got the same gas I'm running in here, right? Because gasoline and water, I can't use water, I can't use diesel. I've got to use the gas I want to run to validate the actual height of the fuel in the carburetor. I got a little squeeze bottle that works out great in there. Pretty wife walking by. She hates it when I say it. All right. Let's see if you can see the fuel. I hope you guys can see that fuel. Let's check it out. Fuel's coming out. Look at that. All right, now it's starting to float. What's floating my boat? That's it right there. So that is full. I have fuel shut off. There. That is at 0.357 inches. That 357 puts that fuel level well below the well vent jet, but it's above the so that puts me in a little bit of a quandary, right? I thought that was my issue. Now I've done this bench test before, right? With the carburetor all put together, squeeze the fuel in until it stops, and it stopped just like it did here. I squeeze until no more fuel's coming out. That's a solid bench test, right? Fuel shouldn't be coming out of there. If I were to, so the next option is to lower my jets down to that 659. So for a 0.13, I would have to lower this fuel by a ½ inch to ensure that we aren't weeping out of the discharge jet. That's a long way. That's a lot of fuel, right? If you look at the overall volume of here, if I go down a ½ inch out of there, am I going to be able to function? Then we'll be below the discharge vent. I'm going to try that and see if it runs. And then if it works and doesn't leak, then we have something we can build back up from if the tractor doesn't run. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go beyond. I'm going to go down 4/10 of an inch. That's a lot. I understand that. But that'll get us well below the discharge port, and hopefully we'll have enough fuel in the bowl to actually run under power. And if we don't, we can start bumping it back up a little bit at a time until we either cross this threshold and start leaking, or we reach the power band like we're supposed to. So I've got a plan. We've got a plan. Let's try it. I can hear the float rattling around, not rattling, but I can hear it opening and closing. So we're back at the stage where we get to walk back out on that tractor for whatever attempt this is, whatever number it is, plug it in, fire it up. Well, first of all, we'll just turn on the fuel and wait for a while. See if that fuel starts leaking out. If it doesn't, we'll fire up the tractor, see if it runs. Let's check it out. Okay, I've had this carb sitting here for about 4 or 5 minutes. I have detected no leaks at all through the throttle body or through the carburetor at all. So we're going to see if it'll start up and actually run and get some RPMs out of here. Maybe we'll even take it for a spin around the road. I gotta go pick up my trash from the end of the road. So it's plenty warm out. I really shouldn't need to choke it to get it to take off and run. Fuel is on. Key is on. Let's give it a little bit of throttle. Give it a little choke. These engines can be picky.